The Portfolio Composer, episode 210.
You're listening to the Portfolio Composer podcast with your host and coach, Garrett Hope, where he teaches you what it takes to master the business end of writing music through mindset, marketing, and business skills. Make sure to sign up for the newsletter at theportfoliocomposer.com for exclusive offers, business insights, and information not shared on the podcast. And now, for this episode of The Portfolio Composer.
I was afraid, just like every musician, that I was never going to work again and that I was never going to earn a dollar. So I was just spreading myself as far and wide as I could possibly spread myself. I learned how to do as many things as you could possibly do. Mix records, engineer records, do Pro Tools programming. I auto-tuned Cher at one point. I mean, like anything that I could get my hands on that was even tangentially related, that's what I did. I did have a goal in mind. I was not willing to let that goal derail my ultimate goal of stability. And as a result, I have stability and I have my goal.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. Just released, Dorico Pro 2 is a major new version, including features for musicians working in film and TV music and in jazz, rock, and pop. Steinberg have also released Dorico Elements, a new entry-level application that packs all of the essential power of Dorico Pro into a simple, streamlined package that is ideal for those getting started. Find out more later in the show. Hello, and welcome to episode 210 of the Portfolio Composer podcast. I am your host, your coach, your teacher, Garrett Hope, and I'm just thrilled that you're listening to this. Today's interview is with composer Gabriel Mann. And Gabriel is not just a composer, he's also a songwriter, a singer, and a band member of the LA-based alternative rock band The Rescues. He's made significant strides in just about every corner of the music industry. He is equally comfortable in drama and comedy, scoring, songwriting, and production. He wrote the theme and currently composes for the award-winning hit comedy series Modern Family, now in its 10th season, and is currently writing and producing songs and score for ABC's new drama A Million Little Things. And right before we recorded this interview, I found out that he was also an assistant and songwriter on Arrested Development, one of my all-time favorite TV shows, which we get into a little bit. You're going to have to forgive me for my really bad singing. Gabriel does a much better job than I do. I think you'll get a lot out of this interview, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. Gabriel, welcome to the Portfolio Composer podcast. I'm really excited to speak with you.
Thank you.
So I'm curious because the idea of the title of the show, the Portfolio Composer, comes from investing. And I stole the term from the investment community where we diversify. For instance, a composer, yet I have multiple activities that fit under that umbrella that generate revenue. I want to start right there with you. What is in your portfolio of income-producing activities as a composer and musician?
Well, I'll give you the present and then I will take you to the past.
Okay.
In my present, my primary earning comes from writing music for TV shows. It has become pretty much a full-time career. I do other things in music, but the thing that generates 95% of my income, maybe 90% of my income, is writing music for episodic television. There's some other things that I do now. I do a lot of singing still, session singing, which is one of the things I did in the past. It was one of the things that I could do that people knew about that I could generate some income from. I did a lot of union singing in choirs, for commercials, all kinds of random singing gigs. And I continue to do that now. And I love doing it. And I mostly sing on my own projects, but I still sometimes will get called to sing in a choir or on a random solo thing here in Los Angeles for random projects. Like the kind of projects are like sang for John Powell on his score to the Lorax, stuff like that, like other TV things, commercials, animated characters, things like that. It's not something that I do all the time. When I go to work, I come to my own studio and I write music for TV shows. That's my job. But if I take you a little bit into the past, I did everything. I did everything that you can do in music and even tangentially related to music in order to sort of earn my rent. Basically, I moved to LA in the mid 90s when I graduated from college. And one of the first things that I did after I went to the USC film scoring program, after that, I basically operated on the assumption that I was never going to ever figure this out. So I needed to pay rent, and I wanted to pay rent myself, and I didn't want to like come crawling back to my parents who had given, their blessing to me to go figure out how to have a career in music. I didn't want to come crawling back to them asking for money. So I did a million different things, and I guess I could try to list them. Here's some things that I did. I arranged a cappella music, which is something that I had some expertise in already from college. I was sort of in a known a cappella group at the University of Pennsylvania, and I sort of translated that into earning some money here in Los Angeles by arranging for groups all over the place and recording and mixing and basically producing records for a cappella groups in Southern California. And that was a major way in which I earned my rent for many years. Then let's see, what else did I do? I was in a band, which earned me probably negative money. my solo project, I was in a semi-pro a cappella group, which probably also earned me negative money. I worked as a wiring technician, which is clearly very tangentially related to music, but it was sort of related. Her name was Electricia. She lived in the Valley, and we would listen to Black Sabbath and smoke Marlboro Reds all day long. And I would sit in the back with a small sweatshop worth of guys, and we would breathe in soldering stuff all day long. And Electricia still has examples of my work on her wall as, a testament to how not to wire things.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was particularly bad at that. But that was another thing I did to earn some money. At some point, I started working in a studio that was built by two friends of mine who were in this a cappella group. The a cappella group was called Spiral Mouth. Chris and Becky from that group built the studio, and we had a small record deal, so we all got a little bit of money from that. That's another way I sort of got some money. But it's like I don't really remember how I survived. When I started working in their studio, okay, wait, before that, let me back up. I also was an assistant to various composers, to 2 or 3 TV composers. One was the guy who eventually wound up doing Survivor. Another guy was this guy, David Schwartz, who became a major influence on me and sort of became my mentor out here. At the time, he had just finished Northern Exposure. And then when I went back to work for him after my sort of solo touring days were over, we worked on Arrested Development together. And that was the first time where I was singing and writing and playing, and they were all a source of income on that particular show.
Okay, I've got to stop you right there.
Sorry. Okay, yeah.
Because Arrested Development is one of my all-time favorite shows, and it is so freaking funny. Like, every time I watch it, I see something new. And it's just almost wall-to-wall filled with little small musical snippets and original tunes.
Yes.
Did you write those?
Well, David is the composer on the show, David Schwartz. So whenever there's a little song, though, that has a male vocal, like an actual song with a lead vocal, those are usually me singing, and we usually wrote those together. And when there's a female vocal, it's his daughter, Lucy. And usually David and I would write those, and Lucy would come up from the house and sing those too.
Okay, so the one that's going through my mind right now is kind of in that quasi-funk style. It's like, oh, what you say to me.
Yes.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. So anytime you hear that, or like Mother Boy, or like Am I Blue, all those things, all those little songs that was one of my first sort of real jobs, I think I would say.
Okay.
But I have to back up more because I skipped a bunch of time in there. When I went to work for Chris and Becky at their studio, I was recording. This is another way of cobbling together a living making music. Chris worked for a video game company. So we would record VO for video games.
Sure.
All kinds of video games, like the Simpsons game and like the first person shooter type games, and guys would be like in the ISO booth going like, "Wah!" and like stuff like that. I was just an engineer. I was just pushing buttons and hitting record and, putting it all into the DAT tape and sending it off to the video game company, and then they would do whatever they would do with it. That was a pretty good source of income. Around that same time, I also was starting to diversify my own like recording portfolio and record bands, like actual bands, not a cappella groups, and produce them. And that was really fun. And around that time is sort of how I met Sarah Bareilles, because she was in an a cappella group. And she was like, hey, I have some songs. Can we make a record? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. And so I recorded her first record. All of this is happening at this place that I'm currently sitting in, which is Asylum Recording Studios, which is a studio that was built by Chris and Becky. We've now been here for 22 years and we've made tons of stuff here, and we are leaving in 2 months.
New location?
New location. I'm building my dream studio and it's almost done.
Nice.
But I've been here. I mean, I've made tons of stuff here and it's going to be crazy to leave it, but it'll be nice because like I'll be able to be on this phone call and have the air conditioning on at the same time.
Wouldn't that be a dream?
Those are the kind of benefits we're going to have at the new place.
Right. Okay, so Gabriel, I have a theory of what's going to happen here as you tell your story. I'll tell you about it in a minute. But what you've described is, by my count, about 8 different things that you were doing.
Yes.
And you were probably so busy because you had all these things happening almost at the same time.
Yes, it's true.
And now you really only do like 1 or 2 things. Like you write music.
Yes.
And sometimes you sing.
Yes. And the singing is really sort of a byproduct. The singing is something that I enjoy to do.
Okay.
I don't need to do it. I do it because I like it.
Ah. So one of the things that I speak about a lot on the podcast is the idea of niching down and finding just the one thing to just dive into.
That's exactly right.
We do have to have multiple activities. How did you end up niching down into composing? And you didn't just say composing, it was episodic television.
Yeah, which is not to say that I wouldn't write music for, when they ask me to write the score for the next Avengers movie, I will say yes.
Right, that's a big paycheck.
Yeah. But the place where I had success in composing was actually, okay, I could still back up even a little bit, because somewhere in that time after the recording of all these things for video games, my a cappella group did a show and somebody from the video game company was there and was like, hey, it would be cool for you guys to do an a cappella score to this video game. So that was really suddenly where we bridged the gap of being sort of in this other world to suddenly being paid. Becky and I wrote the music for this video game. We did a score for Crash Bandicoot and it was entirely a cappella. And then we sort of graduated from that into sort of non-a cappella scores for video games. And we wrote music for video games for probably 7 years. So then we were in this world of composing. Then Becky went off and had babies. And during the time that she had babies, I sort of found myself working with David Schwartz again. And that led to meeting some other people. And then I met a guy who was making a pilot, a director, and I did the music for his pilot. That pilot was a big hit. When that happened, that was Modern Family. That was sort of like a major sort of turning point also. I had been writing music with Becky for these video games for many years. And then she went away and I had to figure out what I was going to do myself. And I went into TV because I already knew some people. The video game company that we had been working for essentially disintegrated or got like absorbed into Activision Blizzard. And they had their own whole music universe. So we were sort of like gone from that. And then I went into this TV thing because it was there. And you know what I mean? Because I needed to figure out a way to continue writing music. I thought that was what I should be doing. I also was in a band. So right around that time, Modern Family becomes a hit. And I was in this band called The Rescues, and The Rescues got a record deal. So that was like 2009. So I had sort of been pursuing both of these worlds. I was a solo artist for many years. I had 5 records and I was trying to do that. And I was also sort of keeping my hand in the universe of writing music for media with all the video games. And then I found a TV show to work on. And then suddenly they were both happening on a higher level. And I didn't really... When you talk about niching down, it's interesting because when I imagined that myself, it was more like the way that I thought about it was like, I want to be able to say no to stuff. I want to be able to say, I don't want to record your a cappella group. I don't want to make another a cappella arrangement. I want to write music with instruments, record music with instruments. I like that other stuff, but I am sick of it and I want to have a larger... I viewed a cappella music as sort of a rung on a ladder, as a way to get access to the rest of music. It's a part of music and it's not all of it. And so I wanted to be a rock star, but I also wanted to be able to have a reasonable career in case that didn't work out. So I was really very consciously pursuing both of those things at the same time, writing music for media, whatever that media might be, and being in a band and trying to, get a good lottery ticket going with that. So at some point around 2009, both of them kind of happened. I got a record deal with The Rescue at Universal Republic, and I had a hit TV show with my own name on it as a composer. So suddenly I was niching down. It's exactly what you were saying. At that point, I had two major things that I was doing. It wasn't exactly by design. It was sort of by design because I really wanted to do both of those things. And I sort of lucked out into being able to do them both. The band basically ran its course. We had major placements and we had the whole weight of a major label behind us, and we got a song on the radio, and the song didn't go. And so when the song didn't go, I still had this TV show. And so the band still exists, by the way. The Rescue still exists, and we still do stuff, but it's not any of our top priority. It's also definitely not our top earning part of our lives.
Sure.
We all do stuff in music, and we still love doing stuff with the Rescue, but it's not a viable career for us.
Got it.
Anymore. We're old and we have children and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. Well, life gets even busier sometimes. Now, what I'm hearing you saying is you kind of fell into these opportunities, doors opened. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Sometimes our niche chooses us. That seems to happen. But what have you found as a result of being able to have the freedom to say no? So instead of doing 8 things, now you can just say yes to 2. Do you find that you actually have more work and higher quality work as a result of that?
Yes, that's exactly what I find. I find that it's like magical how that has worked out. But I will also say that I don't think that it was exactly in that order.
Okay.
It's not like I said, I'm not going to do this stuff anymore in this category because I want to, see if I can make this other stuff work. I think I was too logical and too practical to give up things that actually earned income in any way until they were replaced with something that earned more income or was more closely related to something that I wanted to do.
Makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I wasn't going to give up, working with David, for example, until I had enough of my own stuff that I really was confident that I didn't need to work for him anymore. Or really just more practically that I didn't have time to work for him anymore because I was spending all of my time making my own stuff for my own project. That was sort of the goal. The goal was always, even when I was David's assistant early on, I went to his studio. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Got this gorgeous room and it's overlooking the Pacific Ocean and it's, it's got everything. And the goal was to be that guy, not to be that guy's assistant. So eventually I gradually got there. It took time. It took time to get there. I didn't get there by saying no to things before I had something better to replace them with.
I get what you're saying. And I think a lot of people do feel that way. It's hard to say no to a paycheck that you know is going to come.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And until that other paycheck is a little bit bigger.
I think this has a lot to do with individual personality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my own mentality is that I just find it to be, I had kids when it's not like I was that young, but like I started a family even before I had the rescues, and I had responsibilities. And even before that, though, I was just never the guy who could pack up everything and put his stuff in a van and sell CDs out of the back. I just was never that guy. And because I wanted to be able to pay rent and I wanted to be able to like go out to eat when I wanted to. So I was doing things that were much more sort of practical in terms of earning a living from a very early age and cobbling them together, as you say, like basically like grabbing, I probably had, if I really could remember them all, I must have had like 50 different things, 50 different sources of income until the point where I sort of got my first TV show. Probably more than that. Just like cobbling it together bit by bit. Because I was afraid. Because musicians are afraid.
Yes, they are.
that they are never going to earn $1 because it's crazy, because there's no path. We don't have a school that you can get a diploma from and then present it to, Stan Lee and say, hey, I'm the guy who should be writing the music. That just doesn't exist in music. Your career is made by hook or by crook, by talent or lack thereof, or relationships or lack thereof. It's not made by your pedigree. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So it creates a very difficult situation because we're afraid. So I was afraid, just like every musician, that I was never going to work again and that I was never going to earn $1. So I was just spreading myself as far and wide as I could possibly spread myself. I learned how to do as many possible things as you could possibly do. Mix records, engineer records, do Pro Tools programming. I auto-tuned Cher at one point. I mean, like anything that I could get my hands on that was even tangentially related, that's what I did. And I did, I guess, have a goal in mind, but I was not willing to let that goal derail my ultimate goal of stability.
Right.
And as a result, I have stability and I have my goal. So I don't know if that makes sense logically, but it worked out somehow.
This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Rode Gustafsson, and I am a publisher with my company Recapo Edition. I was one of the first to buy Dorico. I was watching the release on YouTube, and I think it was within a couple of hours I bought Dorico. I have no regrets whatsoever. I bought it and I never looked back. It's my dream program. I am really a fan of the engrave mode and with the master pages and how the philosophy of music frames and text frames, that you can combine both music and text on the setup that you want. And that's a very important feature for me as a publisher. My workflow has improved a lot, and it sounds nerdy, but it's a joy to work in the program. As soon as you open the program, you say, yes, now I want to create some good music. I think it's a big competitor. There are some features that is not included yet, but I can work 100% of my time in Dorico. And if there is something that I need to do that Dorico doesn't have, I can always do it graphically. I just have to give my congratulations to the team. I am a part of the Facebook group. The Dorico has its own group. The community around it, it's such full of love. And if I have any question, or if the community has any, you just go to Facebook and write, hi, can you do this? Or I can't really find this feature. And almost immediately someone is writing back an answer. I would absolutely recommend Dorico to everybody. I already do that to my colleagues and fellow musicians. And to those who are not sure whether they are the right fits for Dorico, I always say, try to download. It's free for 1 month. Just go ahead, write in some music, and I'm convinced that you won't regret it. It will improve the quality of your music, especially if you're a composer. The output, the raw output, when you just put in the music without editing, it looks beautiful right from the start.
The kind folks at Dorico have set up a special web page so you can go and download a free 30-day trial copy of Dorico. So go and do that. I have been using the program and I'm absolutely in love with it. Go to dorico.com/TPC. Well, do you think if you were able to have let go of that fear earlier on and dived into the things that you have now seen to be fruitful? Of course, this is all speculative because you're looking backwards.
Yeah.
But could you have gotten to where you are a little bit quicker?
It would have been good to do everything a little earlier. It would have been good to like if I could have figured out a way to get to games earlier or get to working with David earlier or not spend as many years working in the studio as an engineer, mixer, producer, and do other things and sort of work with other sort of higher profile people earlier on. I have thought about that sometimes. I had one interesting opportunity when I had just come out here. This is actually sort of an interesting story that is, I promise, is related.
I believe you.
So I just came out here and I went to Passover Seder at friends of ours from San Antonio. I'm originally from San Antonio. So we had friends who lived here who were originally from here and they moved back. And I went to their house for the Passover Seder and there was another guy there, this guy named John Ehrlich. And I remember this meeting. He does not remember, but he was like, hey, you know, I know you're in that USC program. This was in 1995 or 96, I guess, because it was towards the end of the program. He's like, I know you're in the program. I know, but do you want to like intern for me? And John at the time had like a burgeoning career as a commercial composer. He mostly was doing commercials. Now he's like a pretty big time TV composer. He did House, I think. I don't have a great working knowledge of his credits, but like he just did Goliath, I know. He's on a new drama right now. He's like a major TV composer. And if I had more balls and been able to sort of like look at this USC advanced studies degree for whatever it was and be like, do I need that? Or do I need to just be going and doing what I want to do, which is sitting right in front of me. And he's giving it to me. He's like offering me, because once you're in one of these kinds of jobs, and I knew this intuitively then, once you're in the world, if you make yourself useful and you're good at what you do, you're going to like nail it. It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. I knew that this opportunity was good. And I said no, because I was like, I can't really do that. I have to finish my program. And, you know, like, I don't know. That was basically all that was on my mind was like, finish the program. So I think about that sometimes. What would have happened if I had bailed from that program earlier on and gone to work for John? And I probably would have had the kind of work that I have now earlier, but you know, like it's really hard to say whether it would have been better, because what I wound up with was many years of work that was education.
Sure. And skill building.
Yeah. Building skills for many years, skills that I did not have, like learning how to use the software that I use every day still, learning how to engineer in a way that I didn't have any training doing. I probably would have gotten those skills some other way. But the other thing that wound up happening is like, I don't know, it's hard to imagine trading what I have now for some other theoretical possibility based on having more balls. because I am one of the very few people who writes music for a TV show that is syndicated worldwide. That just doesn't happen to everybody.
Right.
There's so much content now, and now more than ever, obviously, that the number of hit shows that are watched by a huge number of people and then get licensed to be in syndication and earn their composer a royalty based on that is lower and lower and lower. The number of those shows decreases all the time. So if I went back in time and was like, well, okay, would that have been a good idea? I don't know. What if I never had Modern Family?
Yeah.
What if I never had The Rescues, which The Rescues is something that is dear to my heart and is also something that I believe has allowed me to work on projects that are very song-based, which is something that I think I'm particularly good at, and it's something that I love to do. And if the Rescues did not exist and I never had a solo career and made all those records, maybe I wouldn't get to do that. And I'd be sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me kind of dive into two things that you said.
Okay.
The first is more of an observation. You described this mindset of turning down that opportunity because I've got to get the degree, right? This is the path. Go to school, whatever.
Yes.
And I tend to spend most of my time in the concert music world rather than the media world. And that often requires master's degrees and doctorates. And I have a doctorate because I had that mentality.
Yes.
It's like, in order to be a legit composer, I've got to do 12 years of school and have $100,000 in debt, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, that is rampant. That was more of an observation. You can react to it. But here's the real question, and I think they're related. How do you recognize those opportunities when you're there? Because I'm not sure, as you told the story, that you actually knew what was in front of you.
Well, that may be true. I think that in retrospect, I could see how stupid I was for not doing that. Like, it was just, it's all we were, like, in retrospect, again, like, we were, all of the guys that were in this USC class, and it was all guys except for 2 girls, by the way, just as an aside. The all we all wanted to do was get a gig of any kind, something after school that would pay our rent, that was related to, what we perceived as our future as the biggest composers of Hollywood. So I had it sitting in front of me, and there were some guys that were in our class who immediately attached themselves to pretty big composers. One of the guys in our class, my friend Ed, went to work for Mike Post immediately after school. And I had this thing in my hand. And I don't know if anybody knew who John Ehrlich was at the time, but I knew that he was like a working guy and he could pay me. So, like, if you have enough at that time, like, all of our mentality was, if you have enough money to pay an assistant, then you have made it. Like,
right. You're doing something right.
You are already there. So I don't know. It seems, it definitely seemed, I don't know. I must not have realized how good it was, how good of an idea it was at the time, because I didn't do it. It's impossible for me to have regret about it.
Oh, right.
Because what has happened to me in terms of my career is all great. But if all the things that had happened to me did not turn out, I would have regretted it.
Yeah. Well, this is part of the problem with kind of looking backwards and saying, well, what if? But
yeah,
there's also a lot of people who have yet to achieve what you've achieved, no matter how old they are. And it's quite possible that opportunity might present itself in such an unlooked for way.
Yes. Well, okay. So here's what I would say about that. I was constantly looking for opportunity, constantly. And it's the reason why I did so many things, because I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. I should do that. That would be great it would be great to work on, I mixed songs for my friend Deb Lurie, who's a film composer, and she was already doing stuff. And she had like a song in some movie. And I was like, and she was like, will you mix this? And I was like, of course I will mix that. That's so awesome. Thank you for asking. And, please, sir, may I have another? Like, I was constantly, after I missed that one, which I didn't really realize was a miss until I think later. When I was done with school, I was voracious in my appetite for doing stuff and my ambition to get to whatever I perceived as was the next level. When I was working in, wiring stuff, I was like, I got to get out of here and go into my own studio. When I was working in my own studio, I was like, I got to stop working on this stuff and work on some other stuff. When I worked for David Schwartz, I was like, I got to get my own show. When I had my own show, I was like, I got to get another show. When I had another show, I was like, I got to get a drama. And I'm still that way. I really am. I mean, I talked to my mom about this at one point several years ago, and she's like, I don't know when you became so ambitious. And I don't know if I have a good answer to that too, other than the total furious struggle for survival and worry about survival that I think comes with choosing music as a path. At least it does for me. I mean, there are some musicians who I run into who are just like, yeah, man, like whatever the universe, brings to me is like cool. And I don't have that personality. I love music. I wanted to do music in whatever way I could do it. But I also really wanted to earn a real living and have a real career.
Right.
And that's really hard and scary. It's scary when you choose something for your career that has no guarantees like that. There's no like piece of paper they can give you that's going to be like, oh, okay, well, you'll get a job here.
Right. No,
it just doesn't exist in music,
Yeah, it's so true. There are no guarantees. I think luck sometimes plays a part, but you still have to be prepared to take advantage of that lucky opportunity.
Exactly.
And build your skills and put yourself in the right place and have the right mindset. And I think those things coalesced for you over time.
Yeah, I learned, I mean, all these little gigs, I learned something from all of them. I'm still learning stuff all the time, constantly. Music is so deep. There's so much to know.
Yeah.
Especially when you're making music that is recorded and where you're responsible for the sound of that recording. It's a huge responsibility. If you screw up anything ever, someone's going to hear that one thing that you made, and that's going to be the only thing they know about you is that you made this one shitty thing. So you have to nail it every time. You know what I mean? And there's many ingredients to nailing a good recording. It has to be written well. It has to sound great. It has to be performed incredibly. It has to have all of those things, no matter how long or how short or how involved or how not involved or whether it's dramatic or funny or whatever it is. It's just got to be nailed. There's too much stuff in the world for it to not be nailed. And I think that all those things that I did over those years when I was trying to figure it all out were critical in retrospect. I didn't know what I was doing when I came out here. I didn't understand that. Like I could listen to the recordings that I made when I was at USC now, and I'm like, oh my God. Like I thought these were amazing when I made them.
Yeah.
When I was 23. You know, this may also be something that, like, I know that this is something that different people have different timelines in terms of this. I came to music late. So like the idea that I didn't know what something good was until later makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I didn't figure out what a good recording was until later in life. I didn't figure out that, like, oh, well, you just can't have that sound like that until later. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a big learning curve.
Yeah.
I've been doing that myself because I thought I was pretty good at mixing and creating demos. And then I started working with someone who does this for a living. And
right. Right. Somebody who's really good at it. And you're like, oh, wow, I suck.
He started picking apart my mixes and it was like, you need to do this and this and this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like such a tool. But now that I'm starting to work on it and doing what I'm learning,
yep,
the mixes are all incredibly better.
And you listen to your old ones and you can't even listen to them.
Right.
Because and you can't believe horrible. You even presented them to someone ever to be like, how great is this?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I get it. So let's start wrapping this up here. I want to be respectful of your time because you're moving studios today.
I'm moving studios.
So if you could just give one actionable piece of advice, if there's one thing that composers, no matter what their goal is, film, TV, concert, whatever, that they could do today to move their career forward, what would you say? Okay,
I could tell a story about this.
Great.
And it basically has nothing to do with music. It almost applies to any career, but it certainly applies to this one. There is a group of kids that came into the studio to sort of like look around, and like I was telling them about my job and like what I do and showing them the studio. There's like 12 kids, and they came in and all of them were like very attentive and like really respectful, except for one. There's one guy who came in and he was like looking at his phone and sort of like fell asleep at one point. And then at some point towards the end, it was really bothering me. I was trying my best to sort of not pay attention to it and to not let it derail whatever genius pieces of wisdom I could bestow upon these children. So at the end of the time they were here, he like perks up and is like, hey, you know, how do we get to do what you do? And I was like, I basically ripped him a new one and said, the way that you would get to do what I do is to do the exact opposite of everything you've been doing since you got here, which has been complete disinterest and disrespect and it bothered me so much. and I think that I made my point with him, which was just that, like, you know, he's not going to get a job from me. He's not going to get a job from anyone who asks me if I know a good guy to give a job to. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge, everyone you meet is potential. Like this is something that, this is where I mean, like it applies to any industry. You know, you don't know who is going to be the next critical person in your life who can provide you with a platform to go from one place to another place. to give you a job, to give you a lead for a job, to put, rent money in your pocket. Like these are like critical issues. So if you're spending your life burning bridges like that, rather than building bridges, that's like a big problem. So I guess I'm saying that if I had advice, it would be stop burning bridges. Don't be your own worst enemy.
Right.
Be your best advocate. Like you are, especially in music, this is true. You are the music. Your personality is in your music. The way that you are with people is critical. If you're a douchebag, nobody wants you, regardless of how good your music is. So, there's that.
Well, that's great advice, right? Be invested, be interested, and care.
And be cool. Like, I swear to God, people ask me like, well, what do I have to know to be somebody's like assistant composer? It's different for different composers. Some guys are, have like a whole litany of tests that they give to their future interns and assistants and whatever, and they have to know all kinds of random stuff. I don't do that. In my opinion, the greatest possible asset that someone that I want to work with could have is that they are someone that I want to work with, that someone who I would like to be around, who has what I believe to be some kind of talent, but generally just somebody that is not a nightmare to be around. Like you're around these people all the time. So like they got to be interested, interesting, fun, an easy hang. Like that's what I care about, and a voracious learner. So they don't have to know anything when they walk in the door, as far as I'm concerned. They just have to want it and be cool about it.
Yeah, it's tremendous advice. Thank you so much for your time, Gabriel. But before we go, can you share with us where we can find you on the internet and how we can listen to some of your stuff, besides just streaming Arrested Development on Netflix?
Yes. Well, you can stream Arrested Development. The Rescues are all over Spotify. My own solo music is all over Spotify, Gabriel Mann. And I have a website, GabrielMann.com, that's more sort of focused on TV stuff. And it just sort of has like pictures of the shows I've worked on and stuff like that. But if you actually want to listen to songs, go to Spotify, or better yet, Apple Music, since Spotify is ruining the world. And what else is there? I don't know. My website is a good one, GabrielMann.com.
That's great. Once again, thanks for your time. This has been a really enjoyable conversation for me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This episode of The Portfolio Composer has been supported by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg. Whether you're a composer or arranger, a teacher or student, working in music engraving and publishing, or working in producing music for media such as film, TV, and games, Dorico is the tool for you. Dorico comes in two versions: Dorico Pro for professionals and Dorico Elements, providing the perfect introduction to the world of scoring. Whichever version you choose, you'll be using software packed full of smart features that produces beautiful results completely automatically, allowing you to get music on the stand more quickly than with any other software. You can bring music into Dorico from your existing software using Music XML or MIDI, and you can try Dorico out completely free of charge for 30 days by downloading a trial version from dorico.com/TPC. Try it today.